If you had told the British public back in the summer of 2024 that their shiny, new, aggressively boring Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, would spectacularly implode in under 2 years, they probably would have asked you to pass the pint and stop talking absolute rubbish. After all, Starmer's entire political brand was, "I am the human equivalent of plain, unsalted oatmeal." After 14 years of unhinged Conservative Party chaos, a fever dream of a period that featured Boris Johnson's illegal lockdown raves, Liz Truss's financial kamikaze run that was famously outlived by a literal head of iceberg lettuce, and Rishi Sunak's reign as a bewildered tech bro masquerading as a politician, Starmer was supposed to be the sensible reset, the adult in the room, the guy who wouldn't do anything that required a dedicated Wikipedia page titled List of Scandals.
But welcome to June 2026, ladies and gentlemen. British politics has officially turned into a high-stakes season of Survivor, and Keir Starmer just had his torch brutally snuffed out.
In a tearful, voice-cracking speech outside the famous black door of number 10 Downing Street on June 22nd, Starmer threw in the towel. This resignation officially marks the United Kingdom's 7th Prime Minister in just 10 years. Yes, 7. The UK changes its national leaders more often than Netflix cancels critically acclaimed sci-fi shows. Number 10 Downing Street isn't even a government office anymore. It's an Airbnb with a really terrible deposit policy.
But how did a man who won a historic landslide majority in 2024 end up being yeeted from office in just 23 months? Grab your popcorn and your heavily taxed energy drinks, because the fall of Keir Starmer is an absolute masterclass in political self-destruction. Let's rewind. Starmer enters number 10 with a massive mandate to fix the foundations. The plan was simple: bring the calm, be moderate, and for the love of God, don't do anything stupid. But his biggest problem immediately became apparent. He had the natural charisma of a damp sponge and a communication style that made AI-generated corporate apology emails look poetic.
I have heard the answer of my parliamentary party to that question, and I accept that answer with good grace.
The cracks started showing almost instantly with what the media lovingly dubbed the Freebies scandal. Starmer, the self-proclaimed champion of the working class, was caught accepting tens of thousands of pounds in free gifts from wealthy donors. We're talking tailored clothes for his wife, premium VIP football tickets, and most bizarrely, over $3,000 worth of designer glasses. That's right, the man couldn't read the room, so a billionaire literally bought him $3,000 worth of spectacles to try and fix his political vision. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. He also casually accepted premium box tickets to Taylor Swift's Eras Tour. Yes, the Prime Minister was living his absolute best Swiftie life, screaming "shake it off," while the UK economy was practically coughing up blood. When the press found out, he panicked and paid much of the money back. But in politics, paying for your own stuff after you get caught stealing from the cookie jar just proves you knew the cookie wasn't yours to begin with. The hypocrisy stench had set in. He promised a new era of serious, austere governance, but he was getting his wardrobe subsidized like an Instagram influencer doing a Shein haul.
In a desperate bid to fix the UK's flatlining economy, Starmer made the bewildering decision to axe the winter fuel subsidy for pensioners. This is a country where it rains 300 days a year, and the national pastime is complaining about a slight draft. You do not mess with the elderly's radiators. While Starmer was kicking back in VIP football seats, he was essentially telling grandmas across the Midlands to put on a third jumper or become a human popsicle for the good of the GDP. The optics were catastrophically bad. Protesters were literally marching on Parliament, holding signs reading, "Freebies Starmer starves elderly." Did this act of geriatric warfare save the economy? Absolutely not. Real wages flatlined, the cost of living crisis deepened to Mariana Trench levels, and Starmer decided the best follow-up was to raise business taxes, thoroughly annoying the corporate class. He managed a staggeringly rare political trifecta. He pissed off the rich, the poor, and the elderly all at the exact same time. It takes real talent to unite the entire class spectrum in pure, unadulterated hatred of you. Now we get to the darkest joke of the entire premiership. Because if freezing pensioners wasn't enough, Starmer decided to test his luck with the "who can I appoint that will immediately ruin my career" game. Enter Peter Mandelson.
In what historians will surely study as the single dumbest unforced error in modern British politics, Starmer appointed Mandelson as the UK ambassador to the United States, a high-profile job requiring extreme diplomatic tact and a spotless public record.
There was just one tiny, minuscule, definitely not radioactive problem: Mandelson's past ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Yes, that Jeffrey Epstein.
If there is one name in the English language that acts as a universal self-destruct button for any public figure, it's Epstein. If you have ties to Epstein, your career is supposed to be over. Unless, apparently, Keir Starmer looks at your resume and thinks, yes, this chap will be lovely to send to Washington. 9 months into the job, Starmer was forced to fire Mandelson as the associations became a radioactive global PR nightmare. But the absolute punchline? Starmer stood up in the House of Commons and tried to claim he was duped by the UK security vetting service. He insisted they had cleared Mandelson for the role. It took exactly 0 seconds for the media to discover that the vetting service had, in fact, explicitly denied Mandelson's clearance. Starmer had looked at a giant glowing red flag that said "do not hire," shrugged, hired him anyway, and then tried to blame the very civil servants he was supposed to be managing. The man who pledged raw competence was serving up grade A cover-ups that crumbled faster than a Nature Valley bar on a washing machine.
Now, you might be thinking, wait, didn't Mandelson have to deal with the US president? Oh, absolutely. And the president in 2025 and 2026? Donald J. Trump. The Starmer-Trump dynamic was initially the most confusing buddy comedy of the decade. A stiff, incredibly dry, left-leaning British lawyer and Donald Trump. In September 2025, they somehow managed to sign a tech prosperity deal. Watching Starmer try to banter with Trump on the global stage was like watching a tax spreadsheet try to have a conversation with a sentient energy drink. But just like every reality TV show, the alliance was built on sand. Trump eventually turned his sights on the UK, publicly trashing Starmer's policies. Trump specifically hated Starmer's disastrously soft immigration approach and his green energy obsessions that left massive North Sea oil reserves untouched while the UK economy stagnated. The ultimate final boss move came on June 21, 2026. Just one day before Starmer actually resigned, Trump hopped onto Truth Social and literally predicted the future, dropping a political nuke. Keir Starmer will resign as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Trump tweeted, citing Starmer's failure on immigration and energy, and capping it off with an iconic, devastatingly condescending, "I wish him well." When Donald Trump is leaking your resignation on social media before your own press secretary even has a chance to draft the internal email, you know your political career isn't just cooked, it's burnt to a crisp and thrown out the window. The final nail in the coffin wasn't just a scandal, it was pure, unadulterated democratic humiliation. In May 2026, the UK held its local elections. It wasn't a defeat, it was a bloodbath. Labour lost over 1,500 councillors, their worst result in decades. And who was waiting in the wings to drink their milkshake? Nigel Farage and Reform UK. The populist anti-immigration party surged, tearing through traditional conservative areas and bleeding Labour's working-class base dry. Farage, a man who has somehow turned drinking pints on camera into a viable political ideology, watched with a smirk as his party decimated Labour's mandate. Panic mode activated. Starmer, desperate to stop the bleeding, executed a wild, screeching handbrake turn. He abruptly moved to the right, announcing draconian anti-immigration policies that made his party base physically gag. Did it work? Of course not. It just made him look painfully desperate. The right-wing voters didn't believe him because he has the conviction of a wet paper towel, and the left-wing voters absolutely despised him for the betrayal. Progressive voters abandoned Labour in droves, defecting to the Green Party. Starmer found himself fighting a two-front war, completely alone in no man's land, getting artillery shelled by both sides of the political spectrum. The aftermath of the May massacre was brutal. The vultures didn't just circle, they landed on his desk. Over 90 of Starmer's own lawmakers told him to pack his bags. His health secretary, Wes Streeting, outright resigned from the cabinet. The writing wasn't just on the wall, it was neon, blinking and accompanied by a blaring air horn. So, who is the lucky contestant stepping up to manage this violently sinking ship? The current undisputed frontrunner is Andy Burnham, the former mayor of Greater Manchester, who literally just won a by-election to get back into Parliament. With his slick hair and King of the North moniker, Burnham looks like a man who is permanently about to sell you a mid-range Audi at an excellent financing rate.
And soon, he will be the 8th Prime Minister in a little over a decade.
Can Burnham save the UK's dying economy? Will he miraculously fix immigration, the housing crisis, and public services? Or will he just be another temporary, highly stressed tenant in the Downing Street Airbnb before he too is ousted in 2028? Only time will tell. But one thing is absolutely certain. Sir Keir Starmer stood at a podium and promised to fix the broken foundations of Britain. Instead, he just tripped over the doormat, set the curtains on fire, handed the keys to the next guy, and walked away. British politics, everyone. Undefeated in its sheer chaotic absurdity.